Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by editor of the Wolfpacker.com and fellow co-host Matt Carter. Today we're going to break down NC State's 19-17 win over Florida State. Weird game for anybody that went to Carter Finley Stadium or watched it on TV. A lot to break down, starting with the lights not coming on at the beginning of the game and the game having to be postponed for at least 10 minutes, or delayed rather, for a game that was already very late on the East Coast. So we'll get into all that good stuff. Just some quick reminders for the listeners and viewers at home before we get started. You can subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us: Apple, Spotify, Google Play. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube, where you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment while you're at it. You can follow us on social media at the Wolfpacker on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will on Twitter. Head over to the Wolfpacker.com. Take advantage of a special deal. For $10, you can get premium subscription to the Wolfpacker.com as part of the On3 network through the beginning of next football season. So that takes you through next August, better part of a year. For just $10, you can get that premium access. So all of your premium NC State athletics news and information, recruiting intel, unlock access to the message boards, read all of the great work that Matt Carter and Ethan McDowell do at the Wolfpacker.com. So take advantage of that deal. Head over to the Wolfpacker.com right now and sign up for a year for just $10. Also, this podcast is sponsored by the rogueshop.com. It's rogueshop.com, ROGUE shop.com. They sell Delta 8 and CBD products, cannabis products to help with your anxiety, stress levels. You need help sleeping. You have chronic pain. They have all the stuff to take care of you naturally. Health and wellness. They sell salves, lip balm, bath soaps, hemp soap, CBD flour, hot cocoa, oils, all kinds of stuff. So husband and wife outfit. The husband is a disabled veteran, and the wife is a certified CBD consultant and life coach. So head over to rogueshop.com. That's rogueshop.com. And if you've never used any of these products before, they're super helpful with pointing you in the right direction, giving you the lowdown on what you really need. They have a chat option on rogueshop.com. So head over there right now. If you have any questions, you can chat with them there, but go support the pod because they support us and they're good people, and they've got some great products that could really help you out. So head over to rogueshop.com and chat with them and start shopping. Okay, Matt, let's talk some football here. Weird game. We talked about it before we started recording here. Started with the light situation. Working my main job here as I'm trying to get ready to watch NC State at 5:00 on the West Coast, and my phone keeps blowing up. I get Twitter notifications. I don't make alerts for most users, Matt, but I have alerts for you at the Wolfpacker. So I have alerts on Twitter at the Wolfpacker. And I'm like, what's going on? And keep seeing, oh, well, I've got an extra 10 minutes before I got to, get ready to start watching the game, because the lights won't even come on at NC State. We were hopeful there for a second that they would just come on at all. Don't really know what would happen if the lights just never came on. So that kind of set the tone. And then Devin Leary gets injured in this game. We'll get into that and more. And NC State wins in that's a weird final score, 19-17. NC State wins this game. They were down when Devin Leary left this game, didn't attempt a single pass with a quarterback the rest of the way, and won the game. So that's very weird. And as our loyal listeners will probably remember, last week I was talking about NC State -3, how much I loved NC State -3, how I felt so smart that I even got -2.5 NC State earlier in the week, just taking advantage of a line change. And let's just say your boy was not pleased with the decision to punt in Florida State territory late in the game. I understand it. I get it. Dave Doran called it a tweener call at the end, but man, that one's gonna sting for a while. So Matt, where do we start? I think we probably start with the Devin Leary injury here, or should we just talk about NC State's grittiness to grind out a win like this at home?
I'll say this. I was hoping NC State would score a touchdown at the end because I picked 27-17, and that would have been like a continuation of my hot streak on picking the scores of football games because it would have been 26-17 at that point. But
I wish they would have scored a touchdown too.
yeah, my column was called "Another Strange NC State Florida State Game," and for Florida State, they seem to turn out really bad at Carter Finley Stadium. They must hate Carter Finley Stadium now, but yeah, back in 1998, Chris Winkie, on his way to Heisman Trophy, threw 6 interceptions in one game, and they lose 24-7, basically because they couldn't stop Torrey Holt, and Chris Winkie kept throwing it to NC State defensive backs. Otherwise, Florida State was probably 5 touchdowns better than that NC State team. Then you had the infamous Christian Ponder fumbling when Florida State was driving down for it inside the 10-yard line with a minute to go and ran a play action pass, and he just, the fake to the running back, he accidentally hit the running back with the fake, and the ball squirted out of his hands, and Nate Irvin got it. That one. You had the Brian Underwood game. Remember where that Florida State team, I think they were up 16-0 at halftime, maybe. And NC State came back to win 17-16 shutout. A team that had an ungodly amount of NFL draft picks. NC State shut them out in the second half, blocked the punt late to set up the 4th and goal, score on a short touchdown pass to Brian Underwood. It was like 10 or maybe 10 seconds to go. And then that's the game where the guy...
Yep.
The big guy.
That's where the GIF was made.
Yeah, one of a classic. So,
a classic.
Yeah, a lot of strange things seem to happen when Florida State comes to NC State. This was one of them, and you had a punter kicking the ball past the line of scrimmage and learning what the ramifications of that penalty was. When he kicked it, I was like, well, with a long kick. So I'm thinking, well, is NC State going to try to make them kick it again, or do they add 5 yards to the end of the run? And then you start hearing the official explain the penalty, and you're like, oh, crap. That's huge. And it ends up being like a 67-yard penalty when you negate the punt and then give NC State the ball at the 13, and then they promptly lose 30 yards due to a trick play pass that Thayer Thomas threw to Jack Chambers, which was the only completed pass after Devin Leary goes down, and it loses 5 yards, and then he gets sacked, and then back-to-back holding penalties, and you have 3rd and 40, and you're on the Florida State side of the 50. Incredible. And, I think this guy we'll talk about Devin Leary, obviously. That's a huge ramification. But I think first and foremost, you have to start with, hey, that's a good Florida State team. They're not a great Florida State team, but that's a good Florida State team. And you came back and won a game down 17-3 at halftime. Fans were very frustrated. I don't know if it could be heard on television, Justin, but they were clearly frustrated at the end of the first half. And you came back, and with your backup quarterback, basically one-dimensional offense, the defense played out of their mind. Your kicker played out of his mind, and you pulled out a 19-17 win, which to me is the sign of a good team. A good team doesn't win that game. Now, maybe you got to recalibrate expectations and yada, 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 but it's still a good team because a good team would have lost. If they're not a good team, you lose that game probably decisively at that point.
It's it's a great defense. There's no question about that. It's a great defense. It's a well-coached team. I mean, but it's a conservatively coached team. So it's a team that is able to win these games by grabbing the opponent by the shirt and dragging them in the mud. And who wants it more? Who? I
Mm.
mean, that was one of those games that when the game was over, it's kind of like, wow, that I don't know if I'm going to be rewatching that one anytime soon. That wasn't the most entertaining game in the world, but glad to see NC State get through the halfway mark of the season at 5-1. A crucial game for NC State to win. Especially when you consider Devin Leary going down in this game. We don't know how long he's going to be out. Hurts his shoulder. Matt, the first indication seemed to be that the initial X-rays were negative. Correct. So now he
X-rays
gets
were
an
negative.
MRI.
Yeah, MRI on Sunday. It kind of we talked about it before the podcast. Yeah, you could kind of tell. I don't think initially Devin felt the pain in the shoulder, but I know some Florida State fans were not some. I think by some I mean all Florida State fans were upset with the roughing the passer penalty. What I think the defensive lineman hit Leary cleanly. And he hit him in the throwing motion and kind of got him in an awkward spot in the throwing motion by hitting him in the arm. And then the defensive lineman, after Leary falls down, not deliberately, I think, but there was a split second before the defensive lineman falls, and he lands right on top of Leary. And I think that's where the roughing the passing penalty came from. In the process, he knocked Leary's helmet off. And so you can see Leary reaching up to kind of pull. And when he reaches up, he didn't grab the right shoulder. And so there was something in that motion, that muscle motion right there, that he felt the pain in his right shoulder. It was clear he was in pain. I mean, you could tell that walking off the field. You could tell that there was something. And so, obviously, it's not a skeletal issue, but we got to see what the muscle issue may be. But I think realistically, I mean, you have to be real here. Like, quarterback shoulder, throwing shoulder. We just saw Alabama with Bryce Young not play this week.
Yeah.
So
Wouldn't expect him back immediately.
yeah. So go ahead and plan on playing Syracuse without Devin Leary, and we'll see. They got a bye week after that, but it's also a short week after the bye with Virginia Tech. So
Yeah.
we're 100,000,000% doing reckless speculation here, but I think you hit it on the head when we were talking pre-podcast. Maybe Wake Forest would be the absolute best case scenario. That's about 3 to 4 weeks at that point.
Well, that's that it's an interesting point you raised, Matt, because that's the last big one, at least at home. That's the last big one left on the schedule where you're thinking NC State better be fully ready to go. Better be at full health for that game. Because especially against Wake Forest, I mean, how the defense is going to go against that offense, it's probably going to limit it, but it's certainly not going to stop it completely. And the worry against a team like Wake Forest or even North Carolina at the end of the season in Chapel Hill is they're going to put some points on the board. And NC State's already struggled to put points on the board with Devin Leary. Now with him out of the equation, how competent can this NC State offense be? On one hand, when Jack Chambers went in the game, it almost felt like, okay, so Devin Leary's first drive of the second half was solid, ended with a touchdown, NC State's lone touchdown of the game. Before that drive, NC State's offense really looked pathetic for the
Stunk.
first half. I mean,
It
it
stunk.
was horrible. I mean, it was like watching paint dry. Then Leary, if I'm not mistaken, gets hurt on the next drive after that, after the touchdown drive. That was when he got hurt. So it looked like maybe NC State's offense was getting into a rhythm. Maybe Devin Leary was going to come back and throw another couple touchdowns in the second half. And he was, it was going to be this great all around comeback. And not only was it the defense shutting out Florida State in the second half, but it was also the offense waking up and figuring out what the hell it was doing against a competent ACC defense. But that didn't happen. We didn't get to see that because Devin Leary had to leave the game. Enter Jack Chambers, who, I mean, as boring as it was to watch, I think NC State's offense was more effective and efficient just because Jack Chambers was able to pick up some yards with his legs. Now, NC State became incredibly predictable considering that they only attempted one pass after
Well,
that. And it
yeah,
was,
he did attempt a couple passes, but he didn't complete. I think he had 0 for 2
excuse me,
officially.
officially on the stat sheet, 0 for 1. Thayer Thomas did complete the other pass attempt, -5 yard attempt to Jack Chambers. But I mean, it was what, 95% run from then
Oh
on
yeah,
out.
oh yeah.
And NC State was able to effectively move the chains at times. But now if Chambers can make a few throws here and there, and they can scheme up some plays for him to get comfortable and make him a dual threat guy, well, then I'm not as concerned about this NC State offense. But they will have to pass the ball a little bit. I was interested. I was waiting for that question post game by somebody in the press corps of, well, you guys really leaned in on the run there at the end of the game. Was that a byproduct of going to Jack Chambers, or was that a byproduct of game strategy? Because we know NC State, once it gets a lead, it loves to play possum and just hope and pray that the clock runs out. And it does everything that it can to drain the clock. But NC State is certainly not a team that's going to go for the kill shot, if you will, if it's got a lead. It's going to be happy with its lead, and it's going to do everything in its control to end the game as quickly as possible. Do you think that was just trying to get out of that game without getting Jack Chambers too rattled? I mean, they were just playing so conservative with him, I thought.
I think it's a combination of factors. I will say too, officially, I remember one pass play was negated by a holding penalty. It was an incomplete pass anyway, but I think some of it, to be fair, I think they did dial up a pass play, and Jack Chambers, that's hard. Yeah, I mean, he's like the guy who's been a starting pitcher in baseball for the last 3-4 years, right? And then all of a sudden, they get in the playoff and they have to shorten up the rotation, so they want the guy to come out of the bullpen. Well, he's never done that. That's not what he does. It's a totally different mindset. It's a totally different approach. And you're bringing him out of the bullpen in Game 3 of the playoffs. So he hasn't even pitched, recently. So he's kind of out of rhythm, a little rustiness type stuff, and I think that's probably what you saw with Jack Chambers. It's one thing to come in versus Connecticut and Charleston Southern, but this is an ACC defense with maybe the best pass rusher in the league on the other side, in Jared Verse. And I think once he saw some of that pass rush coming, he was quick to tuck and run. I think that's the difference from having started a few games and getting into the flow of the season versus coming in kind of cold in an emergency situation, and here come the live bullets. And this isn't Connecticut or Charleston Southern, or even, I remember he played a bunch of FCS teams in his career too. So his only experience, I think, last year was a Power 5 team with Georgia, and it didn't go too well, as you could predictably understand. So, and so I think there was some of that. I think they did dial up some pass plays that he quickly tucked and run on. But also, the way the game was unfolding, NC State won that game because they dominated time of possession in the second half, and Florida State got tired on defense, and NC State was able to run down the field that last drive. They scored a field goal and kicked a short field goal. I mean, that was straight up. That's a tired Florida State defensive front, and they're leaning on them. And even though Florida State knows the run game is coming, NC State still ran it. And
NC State's second to last drive.
Yeah, second to last drive. Started with 11-11 to go. They took over in good field position at the 42, and they ran for 4, 19, 6, 14, 1, 6 to get down to the 8-yard line where they had a 3rd and 3, and then Jack Chambers kept it on the read option and lost 3 yards. And that included Delbert Mims running the football. So he had some fresh legs in there, and he had a few nice runs. And And so, in a way, you kind of saw what the MO may be with Jack Chambers. We need to talk about how great the defense was in the second half. Holy cow,
Okay, yeah,
they
let's
were
get to
phenomenal.
that because
Well, I was
yeah,
gonna say,
it's
when you have a defense playing like that, then you kind of
yeah.
go, okay, let's go into game management mode. Let's quit trying to make plays on offense and manage the game on offense, and that's probably what you're looking at with Jack Chambers.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about football teams and football programs, you think about the stars of the team being the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the star running back. And that's not the identity of this team. The stars of this team are on the defensive side of the ball. They play linebacker. A couple of them play defensive line. A couple of them are in the secondary. But yeah, that's the star appeal. That's why this team has a number 14 next to its name, is because of that defense. And going into the season, you thought that Leary was going to be another reason, was going to be able to pull that offense into, above average, and it's been below average thus far. But to shut out Florida State in the second half, Dave Doran kind of alluded to it in the post game. Florida State going into this game was, the best offensive points per game wise, in the best offensive unit in the conference. So you got to tip your cap to NC State's defense for pulling out the shutout like that. Jordan Travis, this is his first time playing NC State. Had 3 opportunities to do so thus far out of fluky type events. Hasn't played the last 2 seasons, and frankly, in the first half, did what he had to do. Had that early touchdown. They had the other running touchdown with Toafili, the back. But Travis, those 2 costly interceptions in the fourth quarter. That last one, I'm not so sure that was a horrible throw so much as that was a great play by Devon Boykin.
I
That
think,
sealed the game.
yeah. Florida State ended up with a season low in total yards. And so that's kind of what you're looking at when you kind of compare them. It's a team that had played Wake Forest and LSU, and both those teams also held Florida State to under 400 yards of offense, and they did a better job on yards per play than NC State did, but NC State held Florida State to a season low. You got to remember, 71 yards came on one play when Jordan Travis ran for a 71-yard near touchdown. They scored a touchdown on the next play. So, and I think they had a pass play for 37 yards, and I believe on the last drive, they had another 31-yard pass play. So that's 68 plus 71. I'm doing the math in my head. That's 139 yards of total offense on 3 plays.
Yeah.
The rest of the game, they had barely over 250 yards of total offense on however amount of plays that was. Almost, whatever amount of plays that was the rest of the game. So,
Right.
that's an amazing defensive effort. And in the second half, Florida State had 93 yards of total offense and averaged 4 yards of play. Then they threw the ball, 2 interceptions, only had 5 first downs. They only had 1 first down until the final drive of the game. That's defensive domination. I thought, I went back and watched a little bit of War Chant. If you're a member of On 3, by the way, you get to go to all the other sites in the network, and it's a network that's building and building. And a couple months ago, War Chant, which is by far the biggest Florida State site on the internet, made the jump from rivals to On 3. And so that's one of the benefits of On 3. If you pay that $10 special, you can go look at the War Chant message board. But with watching they had a live stream going on during the game, which is kind of cool. So I was curious to see what the reaction was when the interception happened. But in that drive, Jeff Cameron, who used to be a radio host in Tallahassee, was raving about Drake Thomas. Number 32. They used an expletive I won't repeat, wondering if he was going to be back next year. Somebody,
Yeah.
there you go. Somebody look up when what classification that blank is. Um, and somebody said he's a junior. And like, well, hopefully he'll go pro. I thought Drake Thomas was incredible last night, and um, that defense. And you mentioned Devin Boykin. You know, Florida State had scored a touchdown on that exact same pass route. Boykin remembered it, recognized it. They kind of had a feeling it might be coming. It was a simple concept: 4 wide, 2 on both sides. Excuse me, 3 wide, 3 on far side of the field, 1 on the near side. If you're looking at it on TV, and you know, the receiver to the near side is supposed to kind of run a slant to draw the safety, and get man to man on the far side. The 2 receivers were going to run a little curl in, and the 1 receiver breaks deep, and Boykin recognized it and actually played a better receiver on it than the receiver himself did, and Jordan Travis didn't recognize that it was that the DB had a total read on the play and almost kind of baited him into making that throw. So
Yeah.
it's spectacular defense.
Yeah. Not every day you see. I mean, it looked like an over-the-shoulder interception. Like it looked like Boykin was the one running the route for Travis. Now the first interception that Travis threw in the second half to Shaheem Battle, that was just a what are you doing throw.
Yeah.
But got to be in the right place at the right time. Credit to NC State. Maybe you wish you got one of those picks last week opposed to this week. But without those 2 interceptions, I'm not sure NC State wins this game at all. So, tip of the cap to NC State's defense for, game ball 1, 2 through 10 through 11. I mean, the first 11 game balls we hand out should probably go to the defense.
I'll add real quick. We talked about it in the preview podcast. To go back and look at it, Florida State not having a kicking game this year, really struggling with the kicking game, really came into play late because that was the play call of a coach who wasn't convinced that he could run down the clock and win it with a field goal. So that was totally, and that's the right mentality because even though the kid had made a 40-some yard field goal, prior to this game, he was 4 for 9 kicking field goals with a longer 30. So, and he had missed an extra point at some point along the way too. So, that's what happens when you don't have a reliable kicking game. And we mentioned that could come into play, and it did come into play.
But even when you do have a reliable kicking game, I'm going to be heard about this 2.5, Matt, for at least a week. I'll get over it before the Syracuse game. Very, very interested to see what the spread is going to be for next Saturday up in the Carrier Dome. We've talked about NC State being favored in every game remaining. I don't know if NC State's the favorite going up to the Carrier Dome on Saturday without Devin Leary. We don't know for sure yet, but we're assuming without Devin Leary. I don't see any value putting NC State in the favorite column on the road. I mean, even when Syracuse sucked a couple years ago, and NC State went up there, and I don't even think Syracuse had an ACC win yet that year.
No, they only won one game. That team won one.
That game was close.
Mm-hmm. And Devin Leary wasn't there. It was Bailey Hockman. I'm looking at it right now. I only see one line, and it has NC State favored by 4. But I'm guessing that doesn't Vegas kind of use.
No, that's gotta be that has to be with Devin Leary.
Yeah,
because if NC State was only a 3-point favorite at home against Florida State, they're not taking 4 points up to the Carrier.
You kind of fill me into it. Doesn't Vegas kind of use some computer analysis to initially come up with some of the initial lines, which
oh yeah.
So they're probably plugging in numbers and not factoring in Devin Leary quite yet.
No, yeah. I mean, I don't think you could. I don't know if you could actually go wager on NC State yet. I'm sure that they're going to have to release the new spreads before. They probably pulled it as soon as Leary was hurt, big time player like that, they pull the line until they can re-update. But I definitely, we're going to find out more next week. We'll talk more about Syracuse next week. Florida State probably the better, if you're power ranking the teams, probably the better of the two squads. But the fact that you have to go on the road and you have to figure out how to do it without your starting quarterback potentially, that complicates matters. Although I will say it might be a good matchup game to have a big game like that against Syracuse without. You obviously always want your starting quarterback, but if there is a game that maybe you want to get in the mud and win another defensive-minded game like this one, maybe Syracuse is that opponent.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was about to say Syracuse, great defense, top 10 in the country in total yards per game. So only one team has eclipsed 335 yards of total offense against them. So this is going to be a game you're going to have to win similar to how you approach the second half. A lights out defense. And
a strong kicker.
Yep. And opportunistic on offense behind the running game. So
be a good time for a pick six or two.
Yeah.
Defense, time to score. Defense, you've done so much already. Time to start scoring the football. Let's give out game balls. Matt, I think you already alluded to it earlier. Drake Thomas.
Yeah, he got my game ball. 14 tackles. I thought he was the best player on the field by a good margin. I thought that was Drake Thomas at his finest. So all three linebackers, by the way, played well. All three with double-digit tackle totals. But yeah, Drake Thomas, that was a pretty special performance, I felt like, on his part. So he gets my game ball.
I'll give mine to Devon Boykin just for securing the W, for putting us out of our misery, and ending that game once and for all. I mean, look, I don't want anybody to mistake. I'm happy that NC State won the game for sure. It was just, I think anybody that likes college football, watches a lot of college football, that definitely ranked low on the, if you're not a fan of either of these teams, how long could you watch this game? There was better football to watch on Saturday, but Devon Boykin ended it, sent NC State to 5-1, and now we get ready for NC State going up to the Carrier Dome for what could be more of the same. So we'll have more on that this upcoming week, Matt.
I just want to give a quick shout out because he didn't get a game ball. Christopher Dunn kicking the ball. Get a quick shout out. Yeah, 4 field goals.
Okay, that was the obvious one. That's on me. I should have given my game ball to Chris Dunn. Actually, sorry, Devon Boykin. I'm actually rescinding the game ball. Thanks for the pick, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it to Chris Dunn. It's easy to forget about him because he could have had another 50+ yarder. Would have been a great fantasy kicker. If only would have been used. I think he would have made the kick. I mean, look, it looks like it's got to be from 50 to 55. He's probably got a better than 50% chance of making that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he hasn't missed a kick this year. Knock on wood. Everybody knock on wood wherever you are. But it's been pretty special this year.
Well, there you have it. Great defense, great kicker. Going to get you some wins. So let's see if NC State can go get another one next week. We'll break it down. Last reminders before we sign off here. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us, Apple, Spotify, Google Play. You can always watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment. While you're at it, you can follow us on social media at the Wolfpacker on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will on Twitter. Give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. Go support our friends at rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com. rogue shop, rogueshop.com. Get your Delta 8 and CBD supplies, helps with mental stress, anxiety, sleep. You have trouble sleeping, this is going to help. Chronic pain. So head over and support the people that support us with this pod, rogueshop.com. Last but not least, sign up for just $10. You can get premium subscription to the Wolfpacker.com as part of the On3 network through the beginning of next football season. So that takes you through next August. $10 for the better part of a year now. As our loyal listeners know, it used to be a little bit cheaper, but if you waited too long, let that serve as your lesson that you need to take advantage of this deal now before it jumps up again, because none of these deals are forever. So $10, better part of the year. Head over to the wolfpacker.com. Take advantage of it now. That's going to do it for this podcast. For Matt Carter, I'm Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.